Before we begin our evening, we need to recognize the original stewards of our lands. Because we are all from unique geographic locations, we invite you to open the native land map that will link in the chat. Enter your location and take a moment to acknowledge the communities deeply connected to the unceded land that you live and work on. This map is not perfect. It is eternally incomplete and may leave out or misrepresent Indigenous peoples and their histories. But these lands were and continue to be the traditional territory of people prior to their forced removal. These lands continue to carry the stories of these nations, their fight against erasure, and their celebrations of resilience. As agroforesters, we have an obligation and responsibility to recognize, elevate, and support Indigenous peoples and publicly acknowledge their foundational and continued contributions to the practices and spaces in which we work. Tonight, we will be learning with a great panel of agroforesters discussing their career paths and opportunities to learn and work through the Savannah Institute and the University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry. In addition to Hannah and I, you will also hear from two graduate students at MU, Ben Bishop, give us a wave, Ben, where you're joining from, and Kendra Esparza Harris. Ben is working with Ron Revold on nut tree genetics, and Kendra is working with Ashley Conway on silvopasture research. Eric Hagan from Savannah Institute was unfortunately unable to join us tonight, so I will be talking a little bit more from the SI side. Each of us will share about 5 minutes about our work and the path that brought us to the work we're doing now, followed by 15 minutes of conversation. After that dialogue, we will share questions from you, our audience. If you're joining us from a computer, we invite you to share your questions and comments in the chat box on the platform at any time. We will monitor them throughout the nutshell and make sure to address them during the Q&A session at the end. Everyone will be muted throughout the evening for better sound quality. And if you have any technical issues, please send them through the chat and we'll be sure to address those right away. And now on to the main event. We are so pleased to welcome Hannah, Ben, and Kendra with us. Thanks for joining. Hannah, would you like to kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction, Katie. I am going to share my screen at this point. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my own career path, what led me to the position I'm in right now. So I'm currently the Outreach and Education Coordinator and also a PhD candidate at the Center for Agroforestry here at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And I included a picture of golden seal on the left because I think it represents the sort of slow growth at least that I have experienced in my own wanderings in this career, in this topic. So I'll just share a little bit of the formative experiences that guided me along the way. So I studied anthropology and sociology as an undergraduate and with an environmental studies minor. But I really didn't know where I was headed after that. But I had spent some time working on organic farms over the summers, and I knew that I wanted to be working outside. So after college, I moved to Sandhill Farm, which is one of the oldest intentional community farms in Missouri. That's where the picture in the bottom left is from. And learned so much there about beekeeping and sorghum and popcorn and maple sugaring and mushroom cultivation and you name it, just a really broad range of subsistence farming, tree crops, just all kinds of really wonderful projects happening there. And that had been happening for a long time. So I was able to learn from people who knew what they were doing. And from there, just kind of explored on other farms. I didn't have the land inheritance or the capital to start farming on my own. So I joined other people's farms. So I spent a season at Herb Farm, PHARM in Southern Oregon. That's the top left photo. That's a field of chamomile. And if you've ever had the opportunity to be in a field of chamomile, it is incredibly intoxicating and wonderful. So learned a lot about medicinal herb cultivation and medicine making there. And ultimately had a farm accident that landed me back in my hometown in Columbia, Missouri, with a long road to recovery. And that's really when I got more into education. It was something that I had been drawn to for a long time. And at that point, it was something I could do. And farming was not something I could do in that moment. So I was working for doing garden programs for Montessori and Waldorf schools here, and ended up starting an all outdoors forest garden, forest farming, sorry, not forest farming, a forest school, a folk school kind of project with some other really wonderful educators. And that project is still happening here. And at the time I wasn't making much money, and I was trying to pay off those medical bills, and student debt is a thing. And so I put some of the appropriate technology and gardening skills that I had learned to use and built my little home and garden, and that worked out really well for a while. And ultimately I wanted to pursue more formal education to help me along my career path and to get the credentials that I might need for a more secure, lasting job. So I ended up going up to northern Minnesota to Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center. That's where these photos are from. It's really cold there and beautiful. And I did a sort of work exchange program. So I was teaching as a naturalist educator and also doing a graduate certification at University of Minnesota, Duluth. But I was a little farther north. And then ended up coming back after I did that grad certification with these credits, these graduate credits that I wanted to finish off into a master's. So that's what landed me back at the Center for Agroforestry. And I knew Mike Gold from some previous work here in Columbia, and the connections just came together. And I think so often that is the way jobs happen. The way you find your career path is through networking, through the people you know. So I just wanted to offer a few of the sort of what I call career path portals that helped me along the way, and that I think are a really good starting place if you're not really sure where to begin. So I found some of the organic farming jobs where I ended up through the National Center for Appropriate Technology. ATTRA has an internship map, and I decided to go that route instead of WWOOFing, the willing workers on organic farms, because those ATTRA internships are, for the most part, paid, which is really nice if you have debt or bills to pay. And I also found some really wonderful farms to work on through the Intentional Community Directory. There's a ton of information there, people to connect with. Networking also is a primary part of any conference, and I love hopping around to different conferences, especially MOSES, the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service Conference in Wisconsin, has been really important for me to connect with the right people. I also included a few other things here. I did an AmeriCorps Vista year that really helped me hone my community organizing and event planning skills. And there are a bunch of postings that you can find through the USDA careers portal. So USDA jobs, there are positions with USDA Forest Service, with NRCS, all kinds of opportunities there at all levels of experience. So I think that is a really great place to look too. And MANRS, of course, the Minorities in Agriculture and Natural Resources and Related Sciences, is an organization that has a career fair. I think for the most part, any organization you join that is in line with your interests. So for instance, I'm part of the National Association of Environmental Educators group, and they send monthly emails or quarterly emails with job postings. So that's another really great way to just stay connected with the kinds of jobs you might be looking for, to sign up for newsletters from those organizations. With the Center for Agroforestry, we have, of course, a slew of opportunities. So I have these sort of divided by the audience type, and some of you might find yourself in each of these categories. So for landowners and other agricultural professionals, the Agroforestry Training Academy is a fairly well-recognized program that we offer. It's a week-long intensive training program that started as a train the trainer, and has broadened and is open for landowners that are interested in learning more about agroforestry now. And that typically happens in July. This year it'll be in 2021, it will be a hybrid program with some online learning too. We have a bunch of free resources on our website also. That's centerforagroforestry.org. including a podcast, the textbook of a training manual for applied agroforestry practices, the handbook for agroforestry planning and design, a bunch of research briefs and action guides. And you can sign up for our newsletters there. So Green Horizons is a quarterly newsletter, and Action in Agroforestry is something that you get monthly in your email inbox. For people who are more interested in the academic side of things, I think it's really valuable if you want to learn from some of the faculty who are here to find here or at other institutions, find who's doing the work that is interesting to you and contact them, ask them about what they're doing, if there are opportunities to connect. So some of the research topics that we focus on include ecosystem services from agroforestry, so soil, water, climate, phytochemistry and phytoremediation, tree crop improvement, and we'll hear a little bit more about that from Ben, economics and marketing, silvopasture, and we have a collection of perennial crops, including chestnut, black walnut, pecan, elderberry, pawpaw, and that's a really valuable resource for us too. And then for students also, we have a wonderful agroforestry graduate certification and an MS with a thesis option. So I'm glad to say that Dr. Mike Gold is here in the conversation also. So if there are questions specifically about those programs, if I can't answer them, I might send those questions to Mike. But for me, that was a really important part of my career path also. So when I came back to the Center for Agroforestry and had a graduate research assistantship here, doing agroforestry education work with high school ag teachers. Following that MS, I came into this career full time. And then finally, we're working on some HARC. HARC is the Horticulture and Agroforestry Research Center student internship programs for over the summer to focus really more on land-based research and other professional opportunities for our students to present the work that they're doing and others. So the Agroforestry Symposium is one that is coming up in January 28th through the 30th in 2021. So this will be virtual this year. Usually it's in person on campus, but we'll be spreading it out over a few days for just a few hours each day. We've got some wonderful speakers and invite you all to share about your work either in the networking circles that'll be part of that platform or as a poster presentation. So that's another way. This is another one of those conferences, and certainly right now with as many online conferences as there are, this is a great way to connect with people without having to spend the time or money to travel. And I also want to just welcome anyone to contact me directly to ask about any of these resources. So my contact information is there.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I can't wait to follow up during our discussion period. Ben, are you ready to share from your end?
Yes, I am. Katie, thanks for hosting tonight, and Hannah, thanks for inviting me to come speak. I've been following the Savannah Institute's work for a while, so it's an honor to finally make a nutshell. So I guess I'll start. I don't have a PowerPoint or any visuals like Hannah had, but I guess I'll start with just brief overview of how I arrived at the center. I think probably the first part of that journey was taking a permaculture design course. I think a lot of people come from that path. And that led me to realize that I have a pretty deep interest in growing plants, especially perennial plants, trees, woody shrubs. And then that led me to basically want to go out and see places where they're grown, both here in North America, and also just getting out of the temperate climate zones and also try to experience the fruits and nuts and vegetables that the tropics have to offer. Just really couldn't get enough. I was just soaking it all up like a sponge and realized that, okay, I need to do something about this. I need to make this a priority for me. So I basically started to reach out to anyone I knew in the academic world who was studying forestry or agriculture, regenerative farming. I knew about agroforestry at the time, but it wasn't really on my radar as something that I could actually go and study at a university. And basically what I did, kind of to tag on to what Hannah suggested, just tried to network and talk to anyone I know in those fields, both in industry and academics, just my mentors, and tried to summarize what it was that I wanted to study and what I wanted to work in, and just trying to get some direction. And it was really informative to just call up even people I didn't know, just setting up a Zoom call or a phone call over email with them, and try to hash that out. That was really helpful. And sure enough, I had enough people recommend agroforestry and the Center the Center of Agroforestry here at Missouri to actually look into it. At first, I enrolled as an online master's student, which I thought was really convenient that that they offered that. And it was a great first year introduction into the program. But instead of going on to the second year of the online master's program, I decided to switch tracks to the thesis-based in-person work here, actually in Missouri. So I moved, and I just realized I wanted to work with trees, and I actually wanted to get my hands dirty. So that's what I've been doing. I've been working with tree crop improvement. These days, it's mainly working with black walnut, Juglans nigra. And the lab I work in also works with chestnuts, Chinese chestnuts, hazelnuts, and pecans as well. And what my thesis is I'm studying the way black walnut trees could be integrated into agroforestry systems. So a lot of people here are probably familiar with alley cropping, this idea of farming in between tree rows, but there are certain traits that make certain black walnut cultivars better than others at this. So I'm looking into the collection that we have here. We've got hundreds of black walnut trees, and basically trying to characterize them in terms of their canopy, the canopy density, how late they leaf out in the spring, to see if there's certain cultivars that work really well and reduce the amount of competition between the trees and the row crops, which is one of the biggest issues with alley cropping. And in some cases, it seems that in these agroforestry systems, if you can reduce the competition, you actually end up with higher yields overall. This idea of land equivalent ratio, where the overall output is higher than if you were growing the things individually in a monocrop setting. So it's been really interesting to do that research, and I'm going to be doing the next chapter of that this following spring. So check in again, and I'll have more info on that, of course. And just overall, I'm interested in agroforestry that's happening all over the world and how it can mitigate climate change and adapt to climate change while also addressing food security and social issues as well. It's been a great experience coming here. I guess after I finished the program here, I really enjoy working with tree crop breeding and plant breeding overall. And I think there's some runway to do that. Specifically in agroforestry settings, a lot of breeding is focused on improving the quality of nuts and fruits and seeds and that sort of thing. But I'm also interested in doing that, but also certain goals that are more relevant in agroforestry settings. So I think after I graduate, I'll be doing more tree crop breeding, and I'm also, like I said before, interested in not just cold climate regions, but also tropical regions as well. There's a lot of potential for agroforestry in the tropics and a lot of really cool fruits and nuts and vegetables. So I think that's in my future. And yeah, so I encourage anyone who's interested in agroforestry to learn about the program here. I just think it's been great interacting with the faculty and the other students, and of course the trees. I'm a huge foodie, so I love trying different types of walnuts and pawpaws and persimmons, and so I've been eating well since I've come here. But I just really love how multidisciplinary the center is, incorporating food science and medicine and horticulture, environmental restoration all together. It's nice to see all the pieces fitting together.
Thank you so much, Ben. I loved how you kind of framed your journey as I couldn't get enough, so I had to keep doing this,
Yeah.
Which I think is a big motivation for those of us in agroforestry and beyond, is we just can't get enough of this work, so we have to
Gotta do something about it.
you got to do something about it. That's right. So thanks so much, Ben, and
Sure.
I look forward to chatting with you more as we roll through our presentation.
That's great.
I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit about my journey now. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm a photo person, so get ready to see some of those. Give me 1 second. Oh, it went right to the very end. So here's a preview of everything that's coming. Thank you so much to everyone who shared their journey. Hannah, I really loved your slides on all the great resources of how one can learn and of where to look when they're looking for different career paths and different job opportunities. I am currently the Illinois Demonstration Farm Manager here at the Savannah Institute, but I'm actually going to be transitioning into the role of community agroforester here in Illinois and really focus on community building through the practice and the work on the ground. So I'll share a little bit more about that kind of career transition as we go. But I really fell in love with agroforestry when I was working on an organic teaching farm in St. Louis, Missouri. And I come from a non-farming background. I grew up in Southern Illinois. I spent a lot of time hiking, love spending time outside, and then went and got a couple degrees in anthropology, where I was really focused on the connections that people make between each other, the food they're eating, and the farmers that grow them. So as I was doing my research, I was spending a lot of time inside and writing and doing these interviews, and not a lot of time outside moving my body and growing food for people. And as a result, I was actually very depressed and realized that I needed to make a major change in my life if I was going to continue to be a vibrant and functional person. And the day after I defended my master's thesis, I moved on to a farm, and I have been farming ever since then. But shortly after I got my master's degree, I started working as an AmeriCorps volunteer member at Earth Dance Organic Farm School in Ferguson, Missouri. And when I started work there, they had just installed a orchard, an agroforestry orchard onto their annual vegetable production land. So this aerial photo here shows rows of trees that are on the outside of every annual vegetable paddock. And that's really where I learned the power of perennial agriculture, not only the trees and the pawpaws and the persimmons and plums and all the amazing fruit that was growing in there, but the possibility and potential of other perennial agriculture happening in tandem with annual agriculture. I got to see teenagers try a piece of fruit for the first time right off the tree. I was surrounded by abundance and hope and a community of people that were really committed to reimagining what our food system looked like. It was very different than a lot of the farms that I work with here in Illinois. And I really realized then I wanted to focus on how could we perennialize our food system and how could we start to work towards a food system that was not only productive in terms of yield, but productive in terms of human relationships as well. So having spent some time with the trees and the crops and the people of Earth Dance, I fell in love with a farmer in Central Illinois where all the corn and soybeans are, and it's pretty flat, not a lot of trees happening. And that the opportunity to move to be closer to the person that I loved actually provided the opportunity for me to start working with the Savannah Institute. So I came to Central Illinois a year and a half ago and worked in a shared position with Midwest Agroforestry Solutions, which is a for-profit agroforestry operation, and the Savannah Institute. And started really working on the fieldwork side of production, as well as the education and outreach and research side of agroforestry. Having those two different positions really allowed me to see kind of multiple different sides of the agroforestry coin. I was on the ground doing the work, and then I was also working with folks behind the scenes with how we're going to grow this movement and how we're going to grow this industry. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the demonstration farm program that I've really been focused on. But in addition to my work with Savannah Institute, I also help run a part-time farm business with my partner, John, who's the tall guy in the middle. And we run a Apple CSA on rented land. So we currently have a year-to-year lease on an orchard that has been in production for the past 30 years. The owners of the orchard retired, and John didn't want to see this beautiful, this 2-acre orchard with over 50 varieties of trees cease to produce and cease to exist. So we are currently renting that with hopes that we'll be able to build our own farm business off of leased land. Like many young people, we lack access to capital, and we lack access to land and long-term land tenure. So I'm really focused through my work at SI and in my personal life to work through different scenarios so that young people, beginning farmers that have been categorically disenfranchised from land and capital, are able to do the work of agroforestry. I can talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But the Demonstration Farm Network is the program that I manage here in Illinois, which is a series of 3 farms where we're demonstrating a variety of agroforestry practices. So we have alley cropping, we're working with silvopasture, we work with riparian buffers and windbreaks as well. So we're really trying to show people what's possible on the landscape here in Illinois. And we're able to bring farmers and landowners to these farms and try to learn as much as possible about the practices in the areas where people are actually farming. And through that, this year we were lucky to host our first set of interns who were our field crew for this season on these demonstration farms. So we had 4 young folks, Dane McKittrick, Greta Larson, Meredith Stamberger, and Hannah Patrick, who joined us and who were looking to start their careers in agroforestry. Like all of us here on the call, they came from a variety of backgrounds and had a variety of goals that they wanted to accomplish during their time together. Dane, the fellow on the right, comes from a research background and wants to continue to do agroforestry and agronomic research. Greta is interested in research and design work, so she's interested in doing design for agroforestry systems. Meredith is currently running her own farm business and is going to be working on family land and wants to incorporate tree crops and perennial ag into that. And Hannah actually left us halfway through the season because she was offered a farm manager role, which was her goal, was to move into more farm management and ownership. So through this program, we were able to provide a variety of experiences to folks that they can then springboard and bring into the next steps of their careers. So they're going to be, their time with us has ended this year, so they're starting to move on to those really exciting and next steps. The other program that SI offers support in is our apprenticeship program, where we pair folks that are looking to get more practice on the field side of agroforestry and learn from a mentor farm and farmer. We just ended the 2nd year of our apprenticeship program and we'll be moving into the 3rd. And we've learned a lot of what works for farmers, what works for apprentices, and we're always constantly adapting this program. So if you're someone on the call that is wanting to get more hands-on lived experience and work with someone that has been practicing agroforestry for a certain amount of time, this might be a really good option for you. It's a pretty flexible program. We're in a couple different states, and we're currently looking for apprentices and mentors alike. So there's more details on this on our website. These are the farms that we worked with this season. So Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, and then here in Illinois. Right now we're focused on the Midwest because that's kind of our focus at the Savannah Institute. But there's other great programs across the United States that works with different farms engaged in perennial agriculture as well. So Quivira Coalition has a great apprenticeship program in the more arid West that works with a variety of different agricultural producers, some that engage in agroforestry. Some other ways to tap into SI and really learn from other farmers, industry builders and researchers is the Perennial Farm Gathering. We really try to focus on elevating the voices of the people who are doing the work on the ground. So the PFG is a really great resource for that. It's completely online this year, so you'll be able to join us from anywhere. And it's co-hosted with the Association for Temperate Agroforestry this season. like MU, we have lots of different resources on our website that pair really nicely with all the work that they're doing there. So check us out on the web for those sort of things. And I invite any and all questions through our discussion with the panel and discussion in our chat later about how SI can help you in your agroforestry careers and in your future farm businesses. So thanks so much for the time there. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then we can open up our discussion for the panel. So Hannah and Ben, I have a question to kick us off. What is your dream job in agroforestry? If you could have any job in this movement, what would you like that to be?
Well, I have to answer that it's the job that I'm in, right? I really love my work here, and I feel so grateful to be a part of this community at the University of Missouri. Being in an academic institution has its pros and cons, and one of the pros is that this is a pretty big campus, and there are a lot of people doing work sort of on the periphery of agroforestry that just connects really well. So I feel like there's this giant community that's at my fingertips of people doing really important work, and just a matter of making those connections. So yeah, I'm in it. I'm doing it.
Congratulations to have your dream job. What a joy.
And kind of like Hannah said, I have a similar answer that it's kind of close to what I'm doing right now. I really like working with tree crops, and I think if there was something that I could do that involves the collection, going out and finding new varieties, new genetics to bring in from around the U.S. and abroad, and bringing it back to our collection here and maintaining the different germplasm collections of all the different species that we have, just maintaining that and working with the breeding program would be exciting, and working with lots of different species, and maybe eventually releasing some new cultivars would be really exciting.
Yeah, we definitely need more folks engaged in the work of long-term plant breeding from all different areas of the United States and beyond. And I just want to shout out to all the amazing folks that are doing that work on the ground through different networks, through the Fruit Explorers. There's some really amazing folks in agroforestry right now that are really keeping the traditions alive of people that have done this work, and that work has been lost. So that's another sort of side career path that folks are starting to engage in and bring back all of that amazing resources into our work.
How about for you, Katie? What's your dream job?
I am lucky to be transitioning into that dream job of community agroforester. One of the things that I can't get enough of is talking with folks about agroforestry and different forms of agriculture, and how we can all work together to build better, brighter systems and futures. So in the next couple of years, I'm going to be really focused on how public lands can serve the dual purpose of changing our agricultural food systems and bringing justice into that work as well. So I'm excited that the Savannah Institute has allowed me to expand my work and focus on things that not only bring joy to my life, but will directly impact the work that Savannah Institute is doing in Illinois.
I'm so glad you bring up that point, Katie. I think the justice piece and diversity and equity and inclusion, all of that is so critical in this work, and is sort of related to the question that I have for you all, which has to do more with, so currently, agroforestry is a pretty narrow terminology and focus for a career. And for those who are looking to have a job in that and along that line, it can be hard to find what you're looking for if you're searching agroforestry jobs. And so I'm curious, if you could wave a magic wand for all of the careers out there that don't currently have a requirement for agroforestry to be part of that, you would want to bring into this circle to be a part of the conversation about agroforestry work? Whose work should have an agroforestry requirement?
Sure. I don't know if this totally answers the question, but what came to mind when you said that was some research that came out recently on a tree crop like black walnut showing some really interesting benefits for human health. Some interesting compounds, some interesting biochemistry. And that's something I'd really like to see more of. And I think it helps both fund research to find not just better cultivars for growing for food, but also growing for potential medicines or products that can be outside of the normal, typical agroforestry mindset. I think there's a lot of potential there, and I'd like to see more effort and funding towards that sort of research.
I feel like a large thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is ways that we can incorporate agroforestry practices and the motivations for why people engage in agroforestry into our broader educational system. We already know so little about where the majority of our food comes from. And oftentimes the natural world is completely disconnected from the agricultural world. And the one thing agroforestry is really good at teasing out the nuances and the relationship and showing that, well, the natural world doesn't really exist without humans in it anyway. And we know that our environments have been altered by peoples throughout time. So having these nuanced conversations about the impact, not only the negative impact humans have, but also the incredibly net positive impact we can have on our environments through agroforestry and different works has been something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because I have trouble sometimes explaining agroforestry to adults, and this is my job. and kids actually get it a lot easier than adults do sometimes, because adults have to learn how to get out of their own way sometimes.
Yeah, that's absolutely part of my vision too, is having continuity in agroforestry education, starting with kindergarten, even pre-K, understanding our connection to the natural world and how we can have this mutually respectful and symbiotic relationship with the food and medicine and on all of the ways we relate to the natural world. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
I also think agroforestry has a place in the discussion about agriculture's responsibility in climate change mitigation. And I think not enough is talked about with agroforestry. Sometimes people talk about regenerative farming or conservation farming or cover crops, which are great, but I'd like to see more discussion and maybe even more training in agroforestry for people in those spaces.
There are some great questions coming in too. If we want to come to some of those and then circle back around.
That sounds great.
There's one for you, Katie. Did your new position already exist at the Savannah Institute? If not, how did you go about creating your dream job?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It did not exist at SI, and it wasn't the job that I got hired for initially. I have been very, very lucky to work for organizations that allow the movement of physicians and provide space to voice when you would like to either switch positions or move into a new one. And that's definitely a skill that I was taught in. I don't actually know, right? I distinctly remember someone telling me that if you don't like the job you're in, it's up to you to ask for the job that you want. And if the person that you're working for doesn't see that as a job that would be possible there, then think about a move away from that. So at Earth Dance, I had about 4 different jobs, and I worked my way up to farm manager in a very short amount of time, because my first week I said that I wanted to become their farm manager. And then just worked through different positions to get there. But I digress. So at Savannah Institute, I I had expressed in a review that I would like to do more policy work, that I'd like to work on more community building aspects of agroforestry here in Illinois. And then there was an opportunity where we were applying for a grant, and I had forwarded the idea of the community agroforester as the grant ask. And I wrote that grant, I talked with the funders, and that grant ended up being funded. So I wrote my position description, I wrote the grant to fund it, and now I'm able to move in that position. So that is something that is unique to nonprofit work, that we have these opportunities to create the projects that we want to see happen on the ground, and then solicit funding and support from community partners, foundations, federal, state grants. So that was the long answer to that question. But it does feel very empowering to be able to fund and create a position for yourself.
I think that's a really great example, Katie, of this sort of balance between following your passion and not just taking any job versus gathering all the skills that you need and having a little bit wider net and then focusing in. And I think being in that position that you are capable of pursuing your passions and in the right place to do that is just, that's the sweet spot. I think you're muted, Katie.
Jim, I thought Jim asked a great question. He was curious about what some of the recent agroforestry alumni are doing. What are some of the different career paths that they have taken?
Yeah, I love that question because it's really diverse. And I wonder, let's see if I think Mike Gold had to skip out to go to a different meeting at the same time. But if he's still here. Oh, great, you're still here. Mike, would you want to speak to that a little bit? Because I think, there are people who come to this program as farmers wanting to learn more, and also people who are wanting to going along that academic career path. So.
Right, it's a because we have the online program and the on-campus program, we have a gigantic diversity of backgrounds and people ages from the mid-20s to 60 years old. So it's hard to answer specifically. A lot of the people who are in our online programs are just adding strength to their existing career jobs. Colorado Forest Service or Kansas Forest Service, or working in natural resource as a natural resource professional in the Dakotas and all throughout the Midwest. There are people, for example, there's a woman who got a grad certificate who's, I think, the chief, I have to look up her exact title now, Kathy Watson. She's the chief program officer for information or something at ICRAF, at the World Agroforestry Center. And so for her, this was just a giant boost to her knowledge in her current job. We have had a gentleman who was a lawyer in New York City, but owned farms in Iowa. And he went and did his master's so that he could improve his ability to manage his Iowa farms in a different way. So it's just tremendously variable. Some people are already working in nonprofits and we're eager to gain the agroforestry skill set. Trying to look at many of our on-campus master's and or PhD students. Some of them have gone on into faculty positions. We train a lot of students who also come from different parts of the world, and many of them go back and become faculty members in their institutions in India and Sri Lanka and China and Vietnam and Korea and so forth. And then, of course, there is another group which takes the knowledge that they've gained in the program and they go and work in the field of agroforestry. Many of you may know Badger Johnson, and Badger got his master's here, and he's now doing on the ground tree crop agroforestry down in the Yellow Springs. Is it Yellow Springs, Hannah? Ohio area. One of our early students is working in Gateway Greening in St. Louis. So it really, it's very broad and variable. The people come to agroforestry with a huge amount of diversity in their background. Some were French majors or Spanish majors, or many of you, as I heard, have done anthropology and social sciences and come in and learn more about the biophysical side of things. So really it varies, it just varies tremendously because it draws on such a large eclectic group of people who have an interest in agroforestry and then spin off into many different directions. There's also some people who've been, become very successful as consultants now, realizing that there's a very large unfulfilled niche. So that's kind of the broad brush.
Thank you so much for that broad range of what folks are doing. That point at the end about consultation is something that we get a lot of requests for at SI. And I know is a growing field as people are wondering how to take these practices and put them to work on their own lands and in their own communities. Related to what was brought up in that last question, Carmen says that I have volunteered as a gardener, farmer, and in forest preserve restorations and enjoys growing and trainings. She has a master's degree and has educated their community on how to grow and heal themselves with plants. What would be a starting point in a career in this field? I have more years behind me than I do in the future. And I feel like a lot of folks are coming to careers in agroforestry and other regenerative agriculture with vast experiences and are wanting to deepen and serve at a greater capacity.
Yeah, and I think just to respond to that question too, I feel like you could make a little diagram tree for career paths, and that might be a fun thing for us to do as a follow-up to this conversation. But I think one of the questions that's important to ask is, do you have a preference about working for a federal agency or a nonprofit organization? And then within that first subgroup of who do you want to work for, what kind of organization do you want to work for? Or do you want to work for yourself? Then the next question is, what kind of skills do you have that can lend to a sort of focus for you, especially if you're a little farther along in your career? So it sounds like, you've got a pretty diverse background. And I can relate, I felt like I spent so much time learning about so many different things that in the end, I didn't really have a straightforward focus path. And for me, that looked like imagining starting a folk school or becoming an educator. I think that really serves people well in the educator role.
Another great question is, what sorts of agroforestry career paths are there that might not require schooling? I might be able to pick up the first part of this thread. I have no formal education in agroforestry at all whatsoever, and do work within the realm of agroforestry. And while I do have an advanced degree in anthropology, many of the skills that have served me within my role have actually come from things like theater and being a swim coach, and growing up in a rural area and talking with lots of different folks who come from lots of different backgrounds about things that make them uncomfortable or are a little strange. But in terms of like agroforestry career paths that with no schooling, there's all types of jobs that you can work alongside someone, either through an apprenticeship or in the field with someone and really learn the systems and the work behind that and get paid to do that work. I think that in my generation, we were told I had to go to college, at least my parents told me I had to go to college, but I think I would have learned just as much, if not more, having worked alongside someone that had years and decades of work under their belts. And there's all sort of industry support roles as well. Like one of the things that is much needed in agroforestry is the creation of support of processing of market building for perennial products and things of that nature. So there's all types of different career paths that can add to that. Hannah, Ben, or anyone else have any more to share?
I think the mentorship piece is really key. And apprenticeships, mentorships, there are all different terms for this. And I know Moses is one organization that offers organic farming mentorships. I don't know if they have any people who are doing agroforestry specifically. And then of course, Savannah Institute. And really outside of a formal mentorship program, just finding someone that's doing the kind of work that you want to be doing is a good first step for that kind of networking.
Those are all great answers. And the only other thing I'll add is just simply farming and agroforestry and actually getting trees in the ground and growing food.
There are a lot of questions rolling in, and my child is crying, so I'm going to go on mute and let you take this one, Kate.
One that just came in was, aside from MU, are there other agroforestry research hubs? Do you all know of any private companies or federal sectors that are working on agroforestry research or consultation? I know there's a lot of really great folks that are on the call right now that can probably send some of those organizations and those people through the chat. So by no means are what we're sharing going to be the only folks that we work with, but I just want to give a really big shout out to the the USDA National Agroforestry Center. They do a lot of great research and have a lot of amazing resources that are backed through the USDA. As well as other, they work with directly with the Federal Forest Service. I never get the name right. And different agricultural sectors. Hold on, I have to cough. Sorry.
Okay, I'll take over. So in addition, there are academic institutions that also are working on agroforestry research, but maybe aren't naming it agroforestry or don't have a specific agroforestry program. So for instance, Samantha Bosco, she wrote a question here too. She's a PhD student at Cornell, where she says there's no agroforestry program, although certainly there is agroforestry research happening there. And her question was, she's studying nut tree-based agroforestry for climate smart ag and social justice. And there's a lot of exciting agroforestry work happening in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, and wondering if Savannah Institute ever considers collaborating that direction.
We work with different people out there. So for example, I'm working with Tracy Coulter, who's based in Pennsylvania and as an agroforestry research coordinator there. There's also, different folks that we work with on grants and projects. We're pretty focused on the Midwest because we're looking to really grow the work that's being done here, but we can't do that work at all without the people that have been working on the East Coast. They are kind of the pioneers in what this, current contemporary version of agroforestry looks like. And we've learned an incredible amount from folks at Cornell, producers on the ground throughout there. Jonah, I know you're on the call. I learned so much from you last year when you were coming through the Midwest. So there's lots of amazing folks that are doing that work. So we'd love to continue to work more in coordination with folks, but right now we are not doing any of our demonstration farm programming or things like that out there.
Can I make a comment? This is Mike again.
Absolutely.
So, well, another university that's active is at Virginia Tech, and really the pivot point is John Munsell in their faculty. There are, as those of us who are, those three of you in the circle, in the little Hollywood Squares boxes know, there are regional agroforestry networks like NEMA, the Northeast Mid-Atlantic network that Kate McFarland seems to coordinate. There's the SWAN, for the Southwestern United States. Midwest is pretty well covered between the Savannah Institute and University of Missouri. There's also a Northwest Agroforestry Network. So I would say reach out to the networks and then let the networking begin, right? Because people know people, and that's how this whole thing occurs. This is we've been talking about on this Zoom this evening. And so I think that to start to reach out and touch base and have people put you in touch with other people. And a lot of times universities know a lot of the farmers who are very active. And there's also the Appalachian Beginning Forest Farmer Group. So there's quite a bit of things going on. And I saw in the chat box, Propagate Ventures as a private venture has been hiring people. So there's more and more happening all the time across the whole country.
And Katie Commander from the Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project will be presenting on marketing of forest products later on in the season. So stay tuned for that one. They've grown something really amazing out there on the East Coast.
There are a couple of Savannah Institute specific questions here. One of the early questions that we missed from 6:30, I saw Allerton, I don't know how to say that town, on the map that you just showed. Katie, what projects do you have going on there?
Allerton is my close to heart project. It is on university land. Allerton Park and Retreat Center is kind of a natural areas with some formal gardens owned by the university. And we're renting 35 acres of agricultural land there to start an alley cropping demonstration. So we established our alley cropping demonstration this year using timber crops and working with the farmer that's been farming that land in row crops for the past 20 years. There'll be more information on our website, and we'll be having a field day out there. So if you want to email me, katie@savannahinstitute.org, and I'll share, my email will be shared in the follow-up. I'd love to send you some photos and tell you more about that project. To me, it's one of those ones that really show how we can start building bridges among conventional row crop farmers and agroforestry to really get more trees across the landscape. And it looks like, Tina, you live 10 miles from Allerton, so I'll be excited to welcome you there.
And then there was another question here about if there's any food forest or forest garden research or practice happening with the Savannah Institute.
We have not done much work on that. I know this is something that Hannah, you've worked on a lot, and MU has worked on. It's something that we would like to spend some time researching and working with, but right now we're pretty focused on the practices that we can see widespread across the landscape in Illinois and Wisconsin, where we're doing that work. So hopefully in the future that will come, but we're focused on a little bit of a different scale. And there's all types of other amazing organizations that focus on that work. I know in the St. Louis area, there's a lot of community orcharding happening, and there's a lot of food forest production going on there. So Hannah can also talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it, Katie. There's in some of those urban hubs, there's a lot more of that. And I think this really gets back to this question about, there are all these different careers that don't have agroforestry in the credentials or the requirements, but having an agroforestry degree or having agroforestry farm experience can lend well to us all expanding this field and connecting more. And certainly that's true for urban food forests and forest gardens.
It looks like we're right at 7 now, but sorry, I'm tripping over my words here. Because of time, we're going to cut off the questions. Sorry for my gaffe there, but we would love to keep the conversation going. So I feel free to email me at katie@savannahinstitute.org. We'll send our emails through the follow-up email so you can keep reaching out and asking questions. I also encourage everyone to join us for the Perennial Farm Gathering that's coming up. That's a huge networking time for SI and agroforestry as a whole. The MU Center for Agroforestry has events coming up that can create similar connections and really build on the work that everyone is doing. If you would like to connect with other folks that are here in the chat, please feel free to put your email and your contact information. And that's one way that we can all keep connecting is through email and those sort of channels. So if you do feel comfortable with that and you would like people to follow up, feel free to drop that in the chat and we can send that out to the folks that were in attendance. Hannah or Ben, any closing thoughts for the folks that were joining us tonight?
Just want to thank you all for being here and being part of the conversation. It always goes fast. And remember, after you attend the Perennial Farm Gathering, to check out the also virtual this year, the Agroforestry Symposium, January 28th through the 30th. And that information for that event is all on our website, centerforagroforestry.org. And I'll drop my email in the chat box as well.
Great, thank you for having me. I'd encourage everyone to, if they're interested in agroforestry, to check out the center. It's never too late to start. I enrolled after the age of 30, so don't let that stop you.
If there's one thing we can learn from trees, age doesn't matter. And you really start producing the older you get. So it's never too late. Thank you, everyone who joined us in the chat, who joined us over video. We really enjoyed all of your questions and connecting. Big thanks to Hannah and Ben for joining us, and Mike Gold for hopping in as well from the University of Missouri Center for Agroforestry. And a big thank you from the Savannah Institute. We do these every Tuesday, or not every Tuesday, once a month on the second Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we'd love to see you back here in the future. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stay on and copy the chat, but feel free to leave at your leisure and have a wonderful night.